Imagine walking through a foreign city, the noise and movement of strangers flowing around you like a river, and then, in a single moment, your gaze locks with someone across a crowded street. Time doesn't just slow down. It feels as though it stops, folding in on itself. In that brief, suspended second, you aren't seeing a stranger. You are recognizing something, as if a forgotten piece of your own soul has been reflected back to you from a distant shore. Your chest tightens, not from anxiety, but from a strange sense of arrival. It's as if your entire inner world, everything you've been carrying silently, has just brushed against a force that feels both alien and intimately familiar. Your heart doesn't just beat, it trembles, as though your very being has finally encountered the frequency it has been quietly searching for. This is not simply attraction. This is something the great thinker Carl Jung referred to as synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence that defies logic. It's the phenomenon where two individuals don't meet by accident, but through a resonance that exists on a level far deeper than conscious thought. When two souls vibrate at the same frequency, the connection between them bypasses the tangible world. It seeps into the bedrock of the unconscious, a place where words are unnecessary and time is irrelevant. Think of it like two rivers flowing underground. They may surface miles apart, but when they finally emerge, they are already the same water, following the same current. This kind of meeting doesn't just alter how you see the world. It awakens the dormant parts within you. It asks questions you've never dared to voice. Are these encounters the result of an invisible order that was set in motion long before you were born? Or are they merely beautiful, inexplicable accidents? And when two energies truly merge into the same rhythm, is there anything in the universe powerful enough to pull them apart? These are the questions we will explore today. Let's begin with a deep look into the energetic harmony that exists between two souls. Chapter 1. The energetic harmony between two souls. We live in a world obsessed with data. We believe that to understand a person, we must collect their details, their history, their preferences, the stories they tell. Yet there is a profound paradox here. You can know the entire biography of a person, every fact, every achievement, every wound, and still feel as though you have never truly touched who they are. Conversely, you can know absolutely nothing about a stranger, and in the first instant your eyes meet, recognize them at the core of your being. There are encounters that pass through us like a breeze, leaving no trace. But then, there are those rare moments when someone appears, and the entire landscape of your inner world shifts. Not because of what they say or do, but simply because their presence lands on a deep, quiet layer within you. In that moment, you are brought to a profound stillness. In that stillness, something stirs. It feels like a return, as if a part of you that has been sleeping is finally waking up. You've never named this part before, but the moment it is touched, you recognize it instantly. This is not the same as what we commonly call love at first sight. Love at first sight is immediate, emotional, and often loud. This experience is far more subtle. It operates on a level beneath emotion, beneath thought. It is quiet, yet its impact is deep enough to create a silent movement within the soul. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that are not born from cause and effect, but from a deep connection within the unconscious. In this framework, two people don't meet because of the circumstances around them. They meet because between them exists an invisible resonance that was already established, waiting for the right moment to surface. It is something reason cannot explain, but the soul recognizes in an instant. This isn't fate in the romantic sense we see in movies. It's a deep attunement, where two energy fields touch and begin to share a vibration. When this happens, there is no need for analysis. The soul doesn't operate with logic. It recognizes what is familiar without requiring proof. The experience is like walking into a room and hearing a melody for the first time, yet feeling as though you have lived with that song your entire life. You don't know why it moves you, but it touches something deep within, perhaps a memory, perhaps an emotion, perhaps something you've never consciously known. A connection between two souls does the same. It awakens the silent depths. In Jung's view, this is no accident. Beneath the surface of our daily lives lies a complex structure. The personal unconscious, where our forgotten memories reside, and the collective unconscious, a deeper layer where symbols, archetypes, and ancient patterns are stored. When two people meet, they don't meet only in the present. They also meet within that deeper psychological structure. Imagine walking into a crowded room. There are dozens of faces, dozens of conversations, yet your gaze rests on one person alone. It's not that they are the loudest or the most striking. It's that the way they exist, their stillness, their presence, aligns with a quiet part within you. I recall a story about two strangers who shared a long train ride through the countryside. They had never met before, yet they spoke for hours as if they had known each other for lifetimes. In each other's eyes, they saw a part of themselves they had never been able to articulate. When the train stopped, they parted ways and never saw each other again. But the experience didn't lose its meaning. What happened between them wasn't based on a plan. It was based on resonance. The essential truth here is that this resonance cannot be manufactured. You cannot search for a kindred spirit through effort or strategy. It doesn't respond to external desire. It responds to an inner state. As Jung observed, what is operating within you determines what you attract. If there is chaos inside, you will be drawn to frequencies that match that chaos. If there is stillness, you will recognize stillness in others. Only when you are quiet enough can you hear the signal from those who are truly attuned to you. Often these encounters happen when you least expect them. When you aren't trying to impress, when you aren't searching, when your defenses are down. In that natural state, the energy you emit is most authentic, and it is precisely that authenticity that allows resonance to arise. Yet, there is a critical distinction to be made. Not every resonance is the beginning of a long journey. There are people who touch you deeply but are not meant to stay. They arrive as mirrors reflecting parts of you that are waiting to be recognized. So, the essential question is not whether they are your destiny, but whether they bring you love or help you see yourself. Chapter 2. Are they love or merely a mirror? There is a truth that few people are willing to face when discussing fated connections. Not every intense emotion is love. Sometimes, what makes you tremble isn't who they are, but the way they touch a part of you that has long been dormant. You aren't just seeing them, you are seeing a version of yourself that you have never dared to live. This creates a strange sense of familiarity, as if two souls have known each other for a very long time, even though in reality, they have only just met. Jung called this mechanism projection. It's the process where your unconscious paints what is missing inside you onto another person, turning them into a mirror of your inner world. Consider the story of a woman who was repeatedly drawn to men who were distant, hard to reach, and emotionally unavailable. Each relationship began with an intense passion but ended in disappointment. Through deep introspection, she realized she wasn't truly loving those men. She was chasing the feeling of being acknowledged, something she had never received from her emotionally distant father in childhood. Those men weren't destined lovers. They were reflections of an unhealed wound. Until she recognized this, she was doomed to repeat the same painful pattern. Jung warned that when you fall for someone too quickly, too deeply, and too absolutely, there's a high chance you aren't truly seeing them. You are seeing an image your unconscious has placed upon them. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When what lies in the shadows remains unrecognized, it governs how you love, how you attach, and even how you suffer. You may think you are drawn to someone, but in truth, You are being pulled toward the unlived parts within yourself. This explains why many relationships begin with an overwhelmingly powerful connection, yet over time become confusing, even painful. As the layer of projection slowly dissolves, you begin to see that the real person is no longer as perfect as you once imagined. You are confronted with the truth that what you felt didn't entirely come from them. It came from your longings, your absences, the parts of yourself you had repressed and unconsciously entrusted to them. When they no longer reflect that image, the sense of a soul connection begins to fracture. But this doesn't mean every deep connection is an illusion. Jung saw projection as the first doorway into a relationship of depth, but only if you are aware enough to recognize it. What you see in another person can become a map, guiding your process of self-discovery. If you are drawn to someone's freedom, perhaps there is a part of you that longs to live freely. If you are captivated by someone's strength, perhaps you have been denying your own. The other person is not the destination. They are the mirror through which you come to recognize yourself. A person who is psychologically mature understands what it is that draws them to others. They don't rush to label intense emotions as fate. They pause to discern what belongs to the other person and what is an image created by their own mind. When they can do this, the way they love changes. They no longer love out of expectation, fantasy, or the need to be saved. Instead, they accept the other as they are, a real human being with strengths, limitations, and inherent imperfections. At a deeper level, this is the boundary between unconscious love and conscious love. Unconscious love seeks completion through another. It needs the other to be right, to fill a void, to reflect an ideal. Conscious love is different. It does not begin from lack, but from awareness. You don't love because you need them to complete you. You love because you have begun to become whole within yourself. At that point, the connection is no longer built on projection, but on genuine presence. So, when you find yourself drawn into a connection so powerful it defies explanation, perhaps the most important question is not, are they the one for me? But what are they reflecting within me? Because sometimes, the most fated thing is not that you meet someone, but that through them, you see a part of yourself you have never dared to face. And as the projection fades, when you no longer see the other through the lens of your inner absences, another kind of love begins to reveal itself, quieter, more truthful. It is there that you begin to understand what real love is. Chapter 3. The Shadow. No real connection without darkness. There is a moment that every deep connection must pass through, yet it is rarely spoken of. It is not the moment when two people look at each other and feel something like fate. It is not the early days filled with effortless emotion. It is the moment when things begin to shift, when the ease disappears, when a casual remark touches something so deep that even you cannot understand why it hurts so much. That is when the shadow appears. And it is precisely this moment that determines whether a connection is truly deep or merely a beautiful illusion. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In a relationship, this is true for the connection itself. When you have not seen your own shadow, you are not truly meeting the other person. You are meeting the unresolved parts within yourself reflected through them. When two shadows interact, the relationship is no longer a place of romance. It becomes a space where the unconscious is activated, where repressed parts rise and demand to be seen. You may have experienced this without being able to name it. Someone who once made you feel safe becomes the one who triggers the most intense emotions in you. You don't understand why you react so strongly to a silence, a glance, or a harmless sentence. But if you look deeper, you will see that the other person didn't create that emotion. They simply touched something that already existed within you. It might be a fear of abandonment formed very early in life. It might be a feeling of not being enough, always waiting for proof to confirm your worth. The shadow doesn't come from the other person. It comes from you. But only when a connection is deep enough does it have the chance to reveal itself. This is the paradox of soul-level relationships. The deeper the connection, the less you can hide. The persona, the mask you wear to be accepted, gradually loses its function. You can no longer play the calm person when you are restless inside. You cannot pretend to be strong when a single sentence can shake you. Two people begin to see each other not through edited versions, but through the most real, raw, and unfinished parts of themselves. This is where many relationships break, not because they are incompatible, but because they are not ready to face that truth. Imagine two people standing in front of a special mirror, but this is not a mirror that reflects your face. It reflects what you have tried to forget. Every time the other reacts, every time they fall silent, every time they fail to meet your expectations, that mirror reveals an image that feels familiar, yet uncomfortable. You don't only see them, you see yourself, the part you once refused to acknowledge. The natural reaction is to turn away, to say this person is not right for me, to leave with the feeling that you chose wrong. But Jung saw this differently. He believed that what disturbs you most in others is the shortest path to understanding yourself. But not everyone can walk that path, because to stay in a relationship after the shadow has appeared, you must do something very difficult. Stop blaming. Stop believing your emotions come entirely from the other person's behavior. Begin to ask, what in me is being touched right now? This is not a weakness. It is a profound shift from living as an unconscious reaction to living as someone capable of observing oneself. When both people can do this, the relationship is no longer a place of avoidance, but a space of transformation. Consider a woman who always felt anxious when her partner didn't reply to her messages for a few hours. In the past, she would become angry, blame him, or withdraw. But this time, she paused. Instead of reacting, she looked into the feeling. She realized it had little to do with the present, and was connected to an old memory of being left behind without explanation. Her partner wasn't the cause. He was simply the one who unknowingly touched that wound. In the moment she realized this, she no longer needed to control him to feel safe. She began to face herself. That completely changed the way they connected. This is where the alignment of souls is no longer just a feeling, but becomes a conscious choice. When two people no longer use each other to avoid the shadow, but use the relationship to understand it, a very different kind of connection forms. It is no longer based on everything being easy, but on the ability to stay even when things become difficult. Not because they no longer feel hurt, but because they no longer run from that pain. This creates a foundation that no external force can break, because what holds them together is not temporary emotion, but the level of awareness they have both reached. But if one of the two is not ready to enter that process, the relationship will stop at the very point where the shadow appears. Not because they don't love each other enough, but because they are not yet conscious enough to go further. Not every deep connection is meant to last. Some people come to open a door, to help you see what you have never seen before, and then leave. Not because the connection was weak, but because its role has been fulfilled. So, when you ask whether a connection is unbreakable, the answer doesn't lie in the intensity of the initial emotion. It lies in this: are both people willing to face their own shadow when it appears? Because real connection is not built when everything is smooth. It is built when the truth begins to reveal itself, and only when that truth is seen, accepted, and brought into the light can two people meet at a depth beyond any emotion. No longer two egos searching, but two awarenesses present. And in that place, it is not that no force can separate them, but that there is nothing false left to be broken. Chapter 4. Synchronicity and the Resonance of Two Souls. There is a fascinating paradox in the way humans search for connection. We often believe that to meet the right person, we must first understand them, know who they are, where they come from, whether they are compatible. But reality tends to operate in the opposite direction. There are people you can talk to for hours, exchange hundreds of details with, yet still feel an invisible distance that cannot be bridged. At the same time, there are those who have only just entered your life, who have said very little and done nothing remarkable, yet somehow touch a depth within you that you didn't even realize you were protecting. Not through words, not through actions, but simply through the way they exist. Jung called such moments synchronicity, events that occur simultaneously without any causal relationship that can be logically explained, yet carry profound meaning for one's inner life. According to him, two people don't simply meet by chance. They meet at the precise moment when what is unfolding within each of them reaches a corresponding state, like two underground currents converging at a point neither was consciously aware of. This experience is not loud or dramatic. It is subtle, like walking into a room and instantly sensing its atmosphere without needing to look at anything. It is a resonance at a deeper level that does not need to be translated into words. Its nature does not pass through language. It is a frequency that two people unconsciously tune into, not because they are similar on the surface, but because something within both of them is vibrating at the same rhythm. When you are too occupied with external standards, appearance, career, background, you miss the quiet signals coming from within. But when you begin to slow down and pay attention to the subtle movements of your inner world, you start to realize that there are encounters that cannot be explained by reason. Yet, their impact is undeniably real. Imagine that you are going through a period of transformation. You may be questioning old beliefs or letting go of a part of yourself you have held onto for a long time. You don't speak about it, but within you, there is a clear shift. Then you meet someone, not someone perfect, or someone who meets all the criteria you once set. But when you are with them, you feel a strange sense of calm, as if they are standing exactly where you are heading. Without explanation, you sense an unspoken understanding between you. In Jungian terms, this is the moment when two unconscious minds begin to resonate, creating an experience the rational mind cannot fully grasp, but intuition immediately recognizes. This resonance is like two instruments tuned to the same frequency. When one vibrates, the other naturally responds without any direct contact. This is why some people enter your life and create an immediate, profound impact. Not because they do anything extraordinary, but because they awaken something within you that has always been there, waiting to be named. It may be a feeling you haven't allowed yourself to feel, a desire you have quietly suppressed, or a version of yourself you haven't yet had the courage to fully live. When two souls are truly aligned, what happens is not that they instantly become attached or dependent on one another. Something deeper takes place. They become living mirrors for each other, reflecting what is waiting to be recognized within. And it is precisely this reflection that creates a sense of familiarity that is difficult to explain, as if you are not meeting a stranger but encountering a forgotten part of yourself. However, there is something important to see clearly. Synchronicity is not a promise of permanence. It does not guarantee that two people will stay together, nor does it ensure that the connection will never dissolve. Some encounters last a lifetime, while others pass through your life like a season. Their value is not measured by duration, but by the degree of transformation they bring. Someone may enter your life for only a short time, yet leave an impact that completely reshapes how you see yourself, love, and the world. So, when people say, when two souls align, no force can separate them, this should not be understood in a literal sense. It does not mean they will never part. It means that when a true resonance occurs at the level of the unconscious, it cannot be erased. It may change form. It may no longer exist as a relationship. But the meaning it brought will remain. It becomes part of your inner structure, quietly shaping the way you feel, the way you choose, the way you love afterward. And in that sense, no external force can truly separate it, because it does not exist in a place that such forces can reach. It lives in the deepest space of the psyche, where things are not measured by distance or time, but by how deeply they have touched who you truly are. If you look closely, you begin to see that resonance, no matter how deep, is not the destination. It is only a doorway. It allows two people to touch each other at a profound level. But it does not guarantee that they can remain together within that depth. Because sensing alignment is one thing, but having the maturity to sustain it is an entirely different journey. There are connections that arrive like a mysterious orchestration of the unconscious, yet fall apart not because they were wrong, but because the two individuals were not yet grounded enough to carry that truth any further. Chapter 5. Individuation. Only when each person becomes themselves can a bond become unbreakable. There is a subtle illusion many people carry when speaking about the meeting of two souls. The belief is that once it is the right person, once it is fate, everything will naturally sustain itself. No need to grow, no need to change, no need to pass through the darker regions within oneself. But Jung never viewed love in such a simplistic way. He did not believe in two halves coming together to become whole. He believed in two individuals who have had the courage to walk the path of becoming who they truly are. Only then do they have the capacity to remain together without unconsciously hurting or clinging to one another. Individuation, the process of becoming oneself, is not an abstract idea. It is the silent foundation that determines whether a relationship becomes a place of nourishment or a place that gradually drains the soul. When you are not truly yourself, you are not truly loving the other person. You need them. You cling to them. You place them in the position of being an answer to the parts of you that you have never dared to face directly. And it is that need, not love, that slowly distorts every connection, no matter how deep it may have seemed at the beginning. A person who has not gone through individuation loves in a state of quiet tension, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of not being enough, the fear that losing the other also means losing oneself. And so they control, they over-sacrifice, or they try to become a version that the other person can accept. But the more they try to hold on, the further they drift away from themselves. And the paradox is this: it is precisely that loss of self that makes the relationship more fragile than anything else. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what few people realize is this: if you have not become your true self, you have nothing real to bring into a relationship. What you bring are masks shaped by expectations, unnamed fears, and wounds that are still quietly bleeding. When two people like that meet, no matter how intense the feeling may be, they are only colliding through incomplete parts, not truly meeting in wholeness. Imagine two empty cups trying to fill each other. At first, it may feel like giving and receiving, even like a form of salvation. But over time, both begin to realize that they are offering something they do not truly possess. A sense of emptiness emerges, not because the initial feeling was false, but because its foundation was not deep enough to sustain it. Individuation changes all of this. When a person turns inward, dares to face their shadow, recognizes their wounds and fragmented parts, and gradually integrates them, they no longer seek someone to complete them. They become whole in a quiet way, not perfect, but grounded, not needing to prove, but simply present. And when two such individuals meet, the relationship is no longer a place to heal deficiencies, but a space where two whole beings expand together. This is when the idea of unbreakable begins to take on a completely different meaning. Not because they cannot physically separate, but because their connection is no longer built on need or fear. It is built on deep awareness. They don't stay because they need each other to survive. They stay because they choose each other in consciousness. And a choice born from awareness always carries more enduring strength than any unconscious attachment. You can see this difference clearly in how they are with each other. They don't control, because they are no longer driven by fear of loss. They don't try to change the other, because they have learned to accept themselves first. They don't shatter in the face of conflict, because they no longer see conflict as a threat to their self-worth. Instead, each friction becomes a doorway not only to understand the other, but to understand themselves more deeply. A man once shared that in his previous relationships, whenever his partner needed space, he would immediately fall into anxiety. He interpreted distance as rejection and reacted by clinging even more tightly. But after a period of facing himself, he realized the fear didn't come from the present. It came from an old memory of being abandoned. When he began to see and accept that part within himself, a subtle shift occurred. He no longer panicked in the face of distance, and it was that inner change that made the relationship lighter and more stable. Not because the other person changed, but because he was no longer bringing the same wound into it. This is the true power of individuation in love. It doesn't make you love less, it makes you love more accurately. Not through attachment, but through presence. Not from need, but from choice. When two people walk that path together, their bond is no longer governed by external circumstances. Distance does not pull them apart, because they are not connected through physical proximity. Time does not fade them, because they do not rely on fluctuating emotions. Even misunderstandings cannot easily break them, because they have enough awareness to return inward before reacting outward. That is why Jung did not see love as merely an emotion, but as a process of psychological development. When you become yourself, you no longer love in order to be saved, but in order to truly meet. And when two people meet in that state, there is nothing within them left that needs to break in order to sustain the relationship. No illusion left to collapse. No dependency left to dissolve. Only two individuals standing firmly within themselves, choosing to walk together. And it is at that point that the phrase "no force can separate them" becomes true. Not because the world cannot intervene, but because within them, there is nothing left that can destroy the connection from within. Conclusion. And perhaps, in the end, what you are truly seeking is not someone to hold on to forever, but a connection deep enough to awaken you. Because when two souls truly touch, what cannot be separated is not the two individuals, but the transformation that has taken place within them. The person may leave, circumstances may change, but what has been awakened within you, your self-understanding, your growth, your return to yourself, will never be lost. So, if one day you meet someone who causes your inner world to tremble in ways you cannot name, do not rush to ask how long they will stay. Ask instead, who have I become after meeting them? Because when the energies of two souls truly harmonize, what cannot be divided is not their presence, but the imprint they leave within you. An imprint that will continue to guide you, even when they are no longer by your side.